If we haven't met before, I am a mom of 2 teenage boys, and so my main goal these days is to keep them fed and not eating the paint off the walls. I'm Holly, and welcome to my kitchen. And today I would like to share with you my experience in dehydrating strawberries in particular. Now, delving into homesteading ideas, and to us, we live on a little homestead here in Central Florida, and we love learning and trying new things, and I always say it's an experiment. We don't always are successful at what we're doing, but whatever you're doing, just call it an experiment because you're gonna learn something from it. Now, I've been dehydrating for about 20 years, and my first dehydrator was enormous. It didn't fit in my kitchen. I had to store it in a closet, and so bringing it out was difficult. But nowadays, dehydrators have come a long way. You can buy very inexpensive to very expensive, depending on your purposes for dehydrating. Now, here on our homestead, my goal is to make our grocery dollar stretch as far as I can. And that means if I have a good deal on strawberries from the grocery store, I'm gonna do several different things with them. Now, this week they have had them for 99 cents, which is an amazing price for strawberries here in Florida. So I bought a bunch. And I'm going to show you several different ways in different videos how I use strawberries. But today we are dehydrating. Now, this is my beautiful jar of dehydrated strawberries, and this is several quarts. So know that when you dehydrate food, they're gonna shrink down. All right, so this is many, many, many. These I don't keep on the countertop and let the kids just grab and go. They're like gold to me, so I use them in different recipes. Use them in granola, and muffins, and quick breads. I do use them as a quick snack if we're running out because I can just throw them in my purse. No need for refrigeration. A healthy, delicious, and sweet treat for everyone. Now, we could go long and deep into dehydrators, but I'm just gonna tell you the long and short of it. This one is my favorite one. It is the Nesco Food Dehydrator. And I am not a dehydrator connoisseur, however, I do live on a budget. So I'm always looking for equipment that I'm going to invest in, which investing is important, but something that is worth my money. So this one has been wonderful. It retails probably for around $69, but I'll tell you a little secret. I got it for $10 at a resale shop. So that was the deal of the century for me. Now, when I began dehydrating 20 years ago, I did herbs and things that I grew in my very small garden before I had kids. And then when kids came along, it really was trying to expand what was left over, whether we have apples, bananas, strawberries, all those different things that are maybe on their way out or I have an abundance of, and I want to maximize my grocery budget by dehydrating. This one has worked well for me for years and years and years. I think that I would purchase this one again. I still don't have it in my budget to buy the larger, more advanced, really good dehydrators because this one works super well for me. And a few things about dehydrators is if you're gonna make an investment, do your own research, ask your friends, see what they're using, and go from there. And look at your budget. Now, there are cheaper dehydrators, but the one thing I would tell you to look for are ones that have a temperature gauge on them. This is going to help you a lot in the hours that your dehydrator is running. If you do not have a temperature gauge, you're going to be dehydrating a lot longer, almost sometimes twice as long than if you had a temperature gauge. So we have done fruit, vegetables, and we also do jerky in our dehydrator, and it does have a setting for jerky. We've been making it for years. I feel very safe and comfortable with that. So this I can use for a lot of different things. Now, it is round. It might be a little awkward, but it is smaller than my original one and easy for me to find a place that I can get to it easily. If you're going to store it way up high on a shelf that you need a ladder to get to, you're not going to dehydrate as often if it's easy to get to. So when you have one package of strawberries that's heading for the garbage or you don't know what to do with it, you can whip out your dehydrator and get it done. That's what we're going to do today. So we've talked about the dehydrator. This one comes with trays. Mine came with 5 trays. Your trays are going to have openings like this. And what a dehydrator is circulating air. That's the process it uses for drawing the moisture out of your food. Now, I live in Florida with high humidity, especially in July right now, and that can affect your time at times depending on the humidity inside your home. Now, mine also came with different trays. You can make fruit leather. I don't do that just because of the time that it takes to do that and the effort. And then it will have, if your fruit is smaller or a little stickier or too small, it'll fall through the other trays, you can lay these on top. So it does have a lot of different accessories that I have used through the years. The other thing I want you to get ready before we dehydrate our strawberries is a good paring knife. This is essential for most things in the kitchen, but a good paring knife, you don't need a long blade, nice handle and sturdy. Now you can also use a strawberry huller. Now this is optional, and this is a tool I just happen to have, but a knife works just as well. A strawberry huller is usually round, has teeth on it to get in and get the stems out of your strawberries. You're going to want a cutting board. I'm using a little cutting board because I don't have a lot that I'm working with today. So use what you have. That's my motto. Find a cutting board, your paring knife, and you're ready to go. Now an extra accessory, if you have it, is an egg slicer. An egg slicer actually works pretty well in slicing even slices of strawberries. Depending on your egg slicer and the tines, the strength of them, you can make quick work of a whole quart of strawberries if you're in a hurry. So this works as well. If you don't have it, good old paring knife. Now the last thing, which I think is important, is an aerosol oil spray. Strawberries have a lot of juice. They also can be sticky. And what can happen when you're drying is they will stick to the tray. Spraying your tray in advance with strawberries and bananas especially will make easy work of getting them off the tray when you're done. We'll talk at the end about storing your strawberries, but then you're also going to want something to store them in. For short-term purposes, you can use a zip top style plastic bag. You could use a plastic container with a lid. Mason jars are always great, or recycled jars like a pickle jar, something like that with a lid works well. And we'll talk later on about food storage and how you can store them for long-term use. Now, mine generally don't stay around that long, but I will seal this actually with a sealer so I can maximize that. Again, I live in Florida in a high humidity area, and when I dry fruit, I like to do my very best to keep them fresh as long as possible. So that's what we need to get started. So let's head on over to the sink and get those strawberries washed. Today we're working with a 16-ounce package of strawberries. The first thing we're going to do is wash them. So we want to pick through and make sure there aren't any that are rotten or too soft. We want to make sure that they're all good. It's okay if the fruit isn't perfect, but we don't want any that's too mushy. So now we're going to go ahead and wash. We want to make sure we have all the dirt off from the farm. Any loose seeds, we want to get those off. All right, next we want to cut the tops off of our berries. We want to get all of the green stem off. Now there's two ways you could do that. You can use a small paring knife, or you can use a strawberry huller, which is a tool made just for this job. This is a strawberry huller. It's basically a little round tool with teeth on it, and what that does is gets in, you turn it around a little bit, and it gets that hull right out. Now, it's not necessary to have a strawberry huller because a paring knife will do the same job. Just like that. Now I'm going to put the washed strawberries in a second colander so that some more of the water can come off. And I will use the huller for some of these and the knife just so you can see the difference. And I am putting my stems back into my container. If you have backyard chickens or a compost pile, you can put those right in there. My chickens love these strawberry tops. It doesn't matter the size of your strawberries. We have some large and then we have some small berries. It's okay. Any size is going to work just fine. For the dehydrator, you don't have to have the same size strawberries. We're going to slice them up all the same anyway. Now you might find some berries that aren't to your liking for ripeness. We've got a little color right here of white with the red, and that's okay. The thing about strawberries when you're drying them is it brings out a lot of the flavor. So strawberries that might not be as ripe as you would like them, like white, a lot of white instead of color in the middle, okay? That is gonna all come together when you dry it. Drying really brings out a lot of flavor, especially to fruit that might not be ripe to your liking, but it's a great way to preserve fruit that you have. They're not going to waste, and they're going to be used again for another day. The next thing we're going to do, we have our strawberries. All the tops are off now, and I'm just going to set them beside the sink on a towel and let them dry for a few minutes before I start cutting them for the dehydrator. While they dry, I'll go and get all of my accessories, the things that I need for the dehydrator, make sure everything's together, get my cutting board ready, and my paring knife, and we'll be ready to go. Now we're ready to slice the strawberries and put them on the tray of the dehydrator. So what is easiest is if you take the very bottom, the solid tray, and put it near your work surface, and then start with one tray at a time. And what I did was I sprayed it with an aerosol oil spray just lightly because strawberries will stick, and that is going to save you aggravation at the end when you're pulling off your strawberries. Instead of having to pick at them with your finger, they'll come off a whole lot easier. Now, I had recommended an egg slicer, which can work in a lot of circumstances, especially if you're working with bananas, but sometimes they'll work with strawberries. It makes the work a little bit easier, and it really just depends on the strawberry. And what I would do is take the strawberry end pointed up and go down. Push a little bit on the bottom, and what I end up with is nice, even slices of strawberries. That's one way that you can cut your strawberries. If you don't have an egg slicer, use what you have, and we all should have a nice paring knife. A small knife does the job, and I like to slice them from the hulled area out. You can slice them sideways. There's no right or wrong. Sometimes they end up prettier that way. And I slice them as thin as I can. They're not all going to be exact, and that's all right, as long as they're close so that they can dry evenly. Now, the little end piece that you end up with, you could dry this if you want, but I throw them in a little bowl and we'll use them the next morning for cereal or adding it to oatmeal or anything like that. So I'll put these aside and use them up. Strawberries are one of my favorite things to do. They pack a lot of flavor, a lot of punch. I can use them in so many different ways here. So we're just gonna fill this tray, and then when we're done with this, do the next. Now if you're just doing the 1 quart size, this is probably gonna fill 1 tray to a tray and a half. Maybe 2 trays at the max is all you're gonna need. I have all my strawberries in the dehydrator. I have 3 trays here. Now my top tray is empty, and I'll tell you why. If I only have 2 trays in my dehydrator, I like to put a third to make sure that we're getting nice airflow. Now these strawberries are probably going to take about 6 hours, and I'll come and check on those in between. And then I might also flip the trays and make sure we're getting that nice airflow. Now the temperature gauge on this, if you can see, we have it set to 135. And our legend over here says fruits and vegetables 135. So I have the dial set to 135, and I'm gonna put it on. Now this is where your fan is located on this particular machine, is in the top. And then I'm going to plug it in. And you'll hear the fan running. Now I make sure that it is away from the wall, that it's sort of out on its own space, just to make sure we're not heating anything up. Now I did save a few strawberries for lunchtime, but you will get heat coming off of this machine, and so you don't want to have anything near it that you don't want heated up. So make sure you're giving it its own space. So I'm going to come and check on it probably at about 3 hours and see how it's doing. We have unplugged the dehydrator, lifted the lid, and have beautiful dried strawberries. You'll notice they did shrink up quite a bit, like I said, so that 16 ounces kind of condenses quite small, but this is what they look like. And because we sprayed them, they're going to be easy to get off the tray, just like that. We have different sizes and shapes. Now another tip is checking it at the end. You're going to want to go through as you pull them off the tray and make sure that they're dry. We don't want them to be squishy or have any juice left. Now some might be very crispy, and then you might have a few that aren't dry. So it's all right to take off the ones that are dry, package them, and then go back and finish drying the rest and then add it later. So you always want to make sure that you don't have varying degrees of dry and not dry. Now the thicker ones might tend to take a little bit longer, or end pieces if you're drying them. So let's talk about how we're going to store our dried strawberries. Lots of different ways, and there isn't one that is any better than the other. In some cases for long-term storage they might be. Now again, use what you have. If all you've got in the refrigerator in the pantry this week is some zip top style bags, perfect. We're gonna throw them in here, all right? So you're gonna throw them in here and keep them in your pantry or your purse for those snack times for you and the kids. Just make sure you get most of the air out and zip it up. You're ready to go. And this is gonna stay fine, probably for several months at a time. So this type of packaging works well for what I call short-term storage under a 6-month period. Now, if they've been in the pantry for a couple months, you wanna look them over before you get them out to eat them and make sure they still look fresh. They might be a little pliable and leathery, and that's just fine. We do not want any mold on them. Again, if you're in a drier climate, you'll have less chance of that happening than those of us down here in the south with lots of humidity. Next, you could also use these. I do a lot of food storage in food safe containers with a snapping lid. They work quite nicely in here. Now, a lot of times I don't like to store food long-term in a plastic style material. These are BPA free, but over time they will take on that taste of a plastic taste. So I might just store them in here for a couple weeks if we're going to use them up fast. Next, of course, you can always use a cute little mason jar because you know it's going to look cute on the countertop, right? All your pretty little strawberries. So that is an excellent choice. The glass is wonderful. You just want to keep them out of direct light for long periods of time because that's going to degrade your strawberries over time. Now, I am a jar saver. I don't know if you are, but I use them for everything. So this is an empty spaghetti jar that I have cleaned out, and I keep them on hand, all sizes, pickles, sauces, you name it, I'm going to save it. And I have a whole huge shelf in the garage of all the different size jars. But so this is a perfect size jar to put your strawberries in. Again, it's cute on the countertop, put it in your pantry, and it's going to be just fine. Just how it is for several months at a time. Now, if you want to make sure it's going to last long and keep the moisture out, you could always add an oxygen absorber packet to your recycled jar. That is going to absorb the excess moisture and keep your dried fruit fresh for a longer period of time, probably over 6 months. So that is an option as well. Again, if you're not always using oxygen absorbers, it's not a necessity. My thing is, if you're starting out and you're experimenting with different things and you're not sure if drying long-term is right for you, I encourage you not to invest in a lot of things that you're gonna have on your shelf collecting dust. Do a little bit at the time and say, yeah, I really kind of like this drying thing, or you know what, it's not really for me. And then you won't have so much invested in that. So do little bits at the time. Now the last thing I want to share with you is the being able to vacuum seal it with your vacuum sealer. So I'm going to go ahead and put these in my jar because I think we will fill it up and I will be ready to go ahead and store this jar. I've been waiting to get it full. And then I'm going to put this in my pantry for use this winter. I love using the strawberries in my granola recipe and my granola bar recipe, which will be shared in another video. Yeah, I think this is going to be good. So when you're adding stuff in, you want to shake it down. We want to keep out as much air as we can. So we are pretty full. I'm happy with that. Isn't that just gorgeous? Beautiful, full of bright red strawberries. And I'm gonna take the lid and place it on. And this is a food sealer. We use ours quite a bit because we do a lot of meat. We have a lot of venison and elk that we harvest and process ourselves. And so having this really makes it nice for us to package meat for long-term use. If you aren't into this, you don't have to worry about it. But I just want to show you the different tools that are available that you might run across on a good deal or even a yard sale. Now, this is a tool that probably came with this one many years ago, but I don't know what happened to it. So I did order it, but a lot of times it will come as part of the package. And there's one for a regular mouth and one for a large mouth, and it's gonna have a tube. There is a little hole here for the tube. And then there is a hole in the top of this jar piece. And this is what's going to pull the oxygen out and seal our jars. So this is going to go on top of the jar. It has a flexible gasket ring in there. And what I'm going to do is put it on top and I'm going to press it down to make sure I've got a nice seal on the top of the jar. And when I turn this on, you'll listen to it with me, is it's going to draw all that oxygen out of the jar as if we were canning. We are not canning, okay, because this is like a dry canning type of thing. We're pulling the oxygen out and the seal is going to pop just like it would if you're canning food, and it's going to keep it nice and fresh. Now every time you open that lid, you've let that seal out. You'll want to reseal it unless you're going to put a ring back on and not reseal it. But I open them and reseal them all the time. So all we're going to do is push our vacuum button. And when it stops, we're ready to go, but I'm gonna wait, it's on a different function. I'm gonna wait for that. That went off. And what I like to do is go ahead and pull the tubing piece back out, and you'll hear the oxygen release. Okay, now we wanna pull this off carefully. Sometimes it might not seal on the first one, and sometimes it does. This one did. So how you'll know is that the top is indented and it doesn't come off very easily. Our jar is sealed and it's airtight, and it's gonna be good on our shelf probably up to a year, but it probably won't last that long. So that is how you dry strawberries. We just did a very small batch, but you could do large batches at a time. You can mix different fruits together. That's perfectly fine. I just wanted to show you each fruit individually, how I do them in the dehydrator. So we have lots of options on how to do that. You can dry in your oven, and I don't do that because of our humidity levels, but do your own research, find out what's best for you, and make use of that extra produce that you have, stretching your grocery budget and feeding your family.